Be led by Board Member Malloy this evening. And following that, I'd like to have a moment of silence, and there's three people I'd like to remember tonight in our moment of silence. Zaire Fleming, Greece Athena senior, who recently passed away. Jenny Palma, who used to be a teaching assistant. And Charlie Hubbard, who was a controversial board member back in the early 2000s, but he was what the school district needed. He recently passed away. He changed a lot of what went on in the district and made some really positive changes at the end of the day. So if we could keep the Fleming, Palma, and Hubbard families in your thoughts and prayers, that would be much appreciated.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If I could have somebody move the agenda to the table, please. Moved by Mr. Butler, second by Mr. Stencil. Is there any additions, corrections to the agenda? Seeing none, all is in favor of the agenda. That passes 8-0. I'd now like to welcome our student leaders from Greece Athena High School. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to take a moment just to introduce our student leaders because they're pretty remarkable. First, we have sophomore Kazal Munjin, who is more affectionately known as the mayor of Athena High School. My favorite fact about Kazal is that in his first 2 weeks as an Athena High School student, he knew everybody and everybody knew him. Kazal is exceptionally gifted at building affirming connections. He is also the vice president of student council. He leads our afternoon school announcements. He volunteers at countless school events. And Kazal was a cadet in the Police Officer Explorer program. And after Athena High School, to no surprise, Kazal intends on becoming a police officer in Monroe County, or possibly a future director of security for the Greece Central School District, if we have any say in the matter. Next, we have Emily McMichael. She's a senior. Emily is one of those rare students that excels in a wide range of skills while also demonstrating authentic humility and kindness. Emily is a 3-sport varsity athlete and captain in soccer, basketball, and flag football, where she led the team in securing the Section 5 championship title last spring. Emily is also a member of class council, art club, and will be graduating with valedictory honors this June. Outside of school, Emily also serves as a youth ministry leader through St. John's in Greece. Currently, Emily is in the college application process and has applied to RIT, Roberts Wesleyan, Nazareth, Brockport, and St. John Fisher to pursue a career in either art or math education. Emily, remember in 4 years as you prepare for student teaching that we get first dibs. Please offer a warm welcome for our student leaders.
There are a lot of exciting things happening at Athena, and we are delighted to share a few of them with you tonight. Greece Athena is proud to share that 2 seniors, Kyrie Ann Scudo and Marissa Nitty, have been formally recognized by the College Board as condemned students in the National Merit Scholarship Program for their outstanding performance on last year's PSAT.
As Athena High School continues to expand opportunities for students, the Above the Influence Club, led by Mrs. Rago, continues to grow in members and impact. 55 students participated in ATI's kickoff training again this year through a partnership with the University of Rochester, which prepares students to lead substance abuse prevention campaigns. Last week, ATI students celebrated National Red Ribbon Week by committing to living a drug-free life. At Athena, students signed a pledge, displayed red ribbon stickers, and participated in a substance abuse prevention lesson during SEL classes.
Greece Athena is currently forming an art club led by Miss Heather Irwin, intended to provide students from each of the 4 Greece high schools with the opportunity to curate a local art show from start to finish. students will meet with Rochester industry experts to learn how the process works, then advertise an open call of student artwork, select the artwork, prepare the gallery, advise the event, and manage hours for public viewing. Then, students will take down the gallery and return the space to its original condition. With local business support, the Wilmer Company has offered to host the show's theme of Thoughts in My Head at the Grease Ridge Mall. Stay tuned for more information once event dates are finalized.
Athena High School's pre-engineering pathway is taking flight. Students in our computer-aided drafting and design course led by Mr. Ikas and Mr. Doty have been using industry-standard equipment to design and manufacture products. With the support from the Greece Education Foundation, pre-engineering students custom-made Athena t-shirts in celebration of Spirit Week to ensure every single Trojan had Athena gear. Shown here, you can also see the students creating items shared with each of you during Board of Education Appreciation Week. On behalf of the program, we'd like to thank you for your support of the pre-engineering pathway.
And last but not least, the Athena community enjoys our annual tradition of celebrating Halloween each year. Here are some of the fun photos from Halloween, including Hazel dressed up as our security officer, Mr. O. On behalf of the Athena community, we would like to extend our gratitude for the Board of Education's ongoing support for our students, staff, and families. Let me also take this moment to acknowledge Veterans Day coming up next week, and to offer our appreciation to Mr. Maloney for his years of service. I'd also like to support and well wishes to President McCabe and our chemistry teacher, Miss McCabe, as their son Connor approaches his deployment overseas next week in service to our nation. On behalf of Athena High School, we wish everyone a happy Veterans Day weekend.
Thank you, and if I could have you guys come up, and we can do a picture with the board, with yourselves and Mrs. Flagler. Now it's time for our union comments. Mr. Furlett, welcome this evening.
Good evening. As Vice President of the GTA and President of our 501c3 organization, the Greece Teachers Community Programs, or GTCP for short, I am happy to report that it's been a successful first few months of the school year. It's hard to believe that this Friday marks the end of the first quarter already. Last week, GTA members from grades K through 8 welcomed the parents and guardians of our students in for parent-teacher conferences. The importance of having these conferences cannot be overstated. Building trust and having open communication between educators and their families of the students is crucial in creating a trusting relationship with student success as the goal. We also encourage community engagement as we use the Greece Teachers Community Programs to further strengthen that relationship with the Greece community. In addition to the work we do in the classrooms, the GTCP works on projects such as Coats for Kids and supporting our schools and local food shelves. We are excited to share that we are currently working on a project that would collect gently used sports equipment for our young athletes who may be in need. Details of a community-wide kickoff event will be coming soon. Also, be on the lookout for all the great things happening in classrooms and schools during this holiday season. From Thanksgiving food drives to mitten trees, Our GTA members will be going above and beyond to help make it a season of joy for all our students and families. We look forward to sharing these great experiences with you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Furlow. And I was neglected to tell the parents that you guys can leave if you want. You're more than welcome to stay, but if you guys want to leave, you're more than welcome. Your students choked me up a little bit. They caught me off guard, and so I lost my train of thought. So I apologize for holding you for the extra, but you guys are free to leave if you'd like. Thank you.
They're going to stay because I have to do GASA comments and then we want a picture, so I'm holding them hostage right now.
Oh, so it's your problem, not mine. All right. All right, then, that's fine. All right, moving on. Ms. Flagler, you're up.
Okay, hi, I'm back. All right, good evening again. So I'm here with you this evening as a member of GASA to highlight some of the exciting work occurring from our leadership team throughout the district. As a unit, we recognize that a good portion of our work around our strategic plan commitments occur through the school improvement planning process. This past year, our Deputy in waiting, Mr. Mark Fleming, ensured that each of our 18 campuses now has clear and measurable goals rooted in these 3 priority areas: increasing student achievement, cultivating professional learning communities, and addressing behavioral recidivism. To this end, building leadership teams are becoming truly innovative. For our student achievement goals, we can celebrate the work at Buckman Heights, Pine Brook, Brookside, Long Ridge, Athena Middle, and Olympia, all who use Superintendent's Conference Day to address lead measures for improving outcomes for kids. Reading and math were all the rage. Some teams utilized iReady reports to analyze baseline student achievement data, while others invested time looking into the ARC Core Unit 2. Some of our secondary schools invited expert teachers to lead sessions focusing on instructional strategies in every content, including methods for co-teaching, higher level questioning, and tools to improve engagement through talk structures. This is just over the past 2 months and just on Goal 1. For Goal 2, school leaders are building high-functioning professional learning communities. Over at Arcadia and Athena Middle Schools and English Village, Principals Lum, Fulkerson, and Lewis invested time for PLCs to establish team norms and a common vision, with an emphasis on building trusting relationships, because we know that when teams have a high degree of trust, the impact on student achievement is profound, resulting in greater joy all around. And lastly, leadership teams at Odyssey, Arcadia Middle, and Athena High School are focused on refining our intervention processes in order to address behavioral recidivism, or recurring behaviors. Teams have offered professional learning on topics like therapeutic crisis intervention, Tier 1 or the classroom level intervention strategies, and restorative practices. The common thread here is to build adult skills so that we use function-based thinking, where teams analyze more deeply what the root cause of student behaviors might be in order to more effectively respond, which ultimately will result in better outcomes for kids. On behalf of GASA, I wholeheartedly want to thank the board for your support. You may not always get to see the impact that your roles have on the day-to-day operations and business in our schools, but we do. And we can see that your policies, your decision-making, your hiring and voting have a profound and positive impact. Thank you for continuing to do your jobs well so that we can do ours well.
Thank you, Ms. Flagler. And I don't believe I have anybody from Ag, Sept, Gus, or Teamsters here this evening to speak. Moving on to Residents Forum, I have nobody signed up to speak, and we're going to do one more thing here before we roll into the rest of the meeting. I'd like to welcome Chief Wachowski from the Monroe Ambulance, and I would like to thank Monroe Ambulance for their generous donation of a fully functional ambulance to our Responding to Emergencies Pathway program. With over 70 high school students currently enrolled, this program provides essential skills for future careers in firefighting, law enforcement, and emergency medical services. Through a combination of classroom learning and practical hands-on training, students gain invaluable life skills while exploring career pathways. We'd just like to take a moment to thank Monroe Ambulance for their kind donation to our program. And if you could come up, Chief, and do a picture with the board and Assistant Superintendent Baker, Deputy Smallene, and the Superintendent. We'd appreciate it. All right, moving on to 2.01, budget parameters, budget goals presentation, Superintendent Groutman.
Yep, I'm going to have Romeo come up. Each year, we work together prior to this meeting to really think about our goals for the year in terms of budget. At the same time, Romeo is gathering as much information as he can from the state and other sources to sort of get us ready and prepared for the season. As all of you know, because you've been through this at least once with Romeo at this point, he does a phenomenal job of not only setting the stage for us, but also sort of building this as we go from now until May. So this is the first of many presentations where we'll learn about the budget for the upcoming year.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So what we have for this evening is to share some information with everyone regarding two primary areas. One is New York State and where kind of they stand as far as we know as of now, as well as talking a little bit about what we know about the 25-26 budget development process. At this point in time, there's certain information we know, there's other information we don't know. We'll learn as we go, but this is what we have for this evening. So regardless of whether we're talking about New York State financial affairs or their condition or where we are in our budget development process, the REACH 2027 strategic plan is our commitment and our document to use, regardless of what's happening at the state, what's happening in the district. This document and these goals and commitments are what we will be using throughout the process to try to make decisions and move us in the right direction. And again, the core commitments are igniting learning, cultivating trust, and expanding opportunity. Again, that will be key no matter what's happening around us. This document will anchor us in where we're going to go with our budget. So some good news at the state level. So about a year ago, around this time last year, through the mid-year report that was published at the time, the Division of Budget had predicted and indicated that they were going to be about $27 billion short from 2025-26 through 27-28. That was a year ago. Looking through the mid-year report, just this month that came out last week, the current Division of Budget projection for the three-year deficit is about $14 billion. So they've cut that down by about 50%, which is good news for us. So it does help. How they did it, I'm not sure yet. But they are indicating they've taken in more tax receipts and that they've been able to hold down some spending, plus with some economic forecasts that have been a little bit better than they were last year, things are kind of looking a little bit brighter. For the 24-25 enacted budget at the state level, one point of note is that in the 24-25 state budget, Medicaid and school aid make up 52% of the budget. School aid makes up 27% of their budget, expenditure budget. Medicaid makes up 25%. So we are a big portion of the state budget. So per New York State, again, in their mid-year report, they're indicating that they're on pretty solid ground as of mid-year for 24-25, which is good. And primarily that had to do for the items I mentioned, plus a good economic outlook for remainder year. Through September, they're indicating that their receipts are higher by about $1.2 billion than they expected, and their expenditures are down by about $2 billion. So net, they have a positive position of about $3.2 billion in cash as of September of 24 that they weren't anticipating, which is good news. However, they also go on to talk a little bit about what the next 3 years are going to come. And again, they're indicating that we've got about a $14 billion budget deficit at the state level. You can see $1 billion during next year's budget, $6.2 billion in 27 and $7.1 billion in 2028. What they indicate too is that spending is growing at about 5% each year. Receipts are only coming in at an increase of about 3.5%. So that gap, even though they've been able to do some things to shrink it, they haven't shrunk it to zero. So we're still should be aware of and pay attention to. There are gaps that will be coming up over the next 3 or 4 years. The governor is expected to discuss her executive budget by January 21st, so we'll be looking out for that. And it should be including a plan to budget balance the general fund budget through 2026. I'm not sure if she'll talk about the out years, but we're thinking she'll present a balanced budget come January. And then I indicated on this slide, like, why is this important to us? Our budget is 52% state aid. That wasn't the case 5 or 10 years ago. It used to be 45 or 44%, and it's now creeped up to 52% of our budget. So we are relying more on this state budget than we ever had in the past. So we try to keep our eyes and our ears on this as closely as we can. The final item at the state level, and you may or may not have heard any talk around this, is foundation aid. So in the enacted budget for 24-25, the governor had provided $2 million to the Rockefeller Institute to study the foundation aid formula. As you know, we've been made whole over the last 3 or 4 years, as many districts were, but there is still kind of cause for concern around, can that be sustainable? Are they going to change it after they've fully implemented? Are they now going to change it? Well, they put this in the lap of the Rockefeller Institute to take a look at it. And just to read what's here, their job is to assess the current foundation aid formula and provide recommendations for its update and modification, with any proposed modification to be fiscally sustainable for the state, for local taxpayers, and for school districts. The goal of the Institute is what you see here, is to update those factors in the formula that haven't been done in a long time. 2 examples are regional cost index and census. They are currently working off a census that was from 2000. We're in 2024. They're still working with 24-year-old data and providing funds to district based on the year 2000. 2, how to make the formula more stable, predictable, and simpler. And 3, how to make the formula equitable for each district and reflective of their needs without causing large changes from year to year. And the primary item there, and you'll hear the word hold harmless provision, is what that's referring to. And whether they remove it, modify it, or change it will be a big ticket item. It wouldn't hurt us as much, but smaller districts will be impacted by any hold harmless changes that are out there. The kicker on this is, although they're going to provide this report by December 1st, the state is not obligated to do anything with it. It's not required by law. It's not required by anything for the state to do anything with it. They can shelve it. They can implement changes with it. We just don't know at this point. Moving on to the 25-26 budget, we'll just talk about some of the revenues and some of the expenditure variables that we do know. Foundation aid, we're anticipating 2 to 3% as an increase, pending the outcome of the Rockefeller Institute report and whether or not they implement any of the changes there. On our expense-based aids, those are aids where we spend the money and the state reimburses us a percentage of those the following year. There's no changes to the formulas, and we expect those to be implemented the same way as they have in the past, which is a positive item. Sales tax, regardless of what's been going on with the economy, sales tax receipts for districts have been higher than what we've anticipated. We've been 3 or 4 years now anticipating that those sales tax receipts would fall. They haven't. But to be conservative, we have made slight revisions last year, and we'll probably leave them at that level. But right now, they're higher than we had, but we will continue to budget conservatively for that in 25-26, because if there is any type of a recession or downturn, it could hurt us to the tune of $2 or $3 million, and that's too big of a hole for us to cover. Property tax cap. Allowable growth levy. So from everything I've seen, CPI is going to be in the range. Consumer price index increase is going to be somewhere between 3.1 and 3.5% for the last 12 months. And in all likelihood, regardless of whether it's 3.1 or 3.5, the tax cap will be capped at the 2% limit, as we have seen over the last few years. Major grant funding, no significant changes. We're pretty stable at this point in time. Pilots, payments in lieu of taxes, they're pretty stable. We have no pilots coming off, but we do have one pilot that will be added called, for a Clear Choice building. It's over on Canal Landing near Long Pond and Ridgeway. It's a 30,000 square foot building, 2 stories, and primarily it's going to be a hearing solutions center over there. So that will be coming on. They will get a pilot agreement, and then we'll calculate that into our tax cap calculations. The value of that building is valued at about $6.3 million, so it's not a small chunk of money. It's a good size pilot agreement. Other revenues that would include items such as interest earnings, health and welfare services, BOCES refunds, insurance recoveries, pretty stable. We don't see any real significant changes in those for next year. On the expense side, salaries, we'll do what we have done over the last few years with the initial rollover. It'll be inclusive of all those positions that we currently have. And if you recall, last year, we added about 85 or 90 positions from ARP into the 24-25 budget. We will, at first pass, continue those positions in the 25-26. Salary totals, I just put some indicators here. Non-certified staff is about a $40 million payroll, and for certified staff, it's about a $105 million payroll. So large salaries there. Our salary totals for our 2,500 people or more. Healthcare. This has been a little bit of a change than we've seen in past years. So effective January 1st, our RASP 1 plan, which is our consortium plan for our retirees, those premiums will go up about 7.1%. But for active employees with the district, our RASP 2 plan, that rate will increase 14.4%, which is significantly higher than what trend has been for the consortium. The consortium trend has been about 8.5, 8.6%, but claims over the last year have been crazy, as well as outpatient surgeries, pharmaceutical drugs have just kind of risen ridiculously, which has caused over a 14% increase in our premiums for next year. We're hoping next year dies down a little bit and we get closer to trend at 8.5 to 10%. But for next year, from January to June of 25, so to finish off this year, we'll be at 14.4%. The first half of 25-26 will be 14.4%. We don't know what January or the second half of 25-26 will be, but we're going to assume it's probably going to be closer to trend at 8.5 or 10%. So we'll calculate that in. Our ERS employer contribution rate, the current rate is 15.2% of our 24-25 salaries. That will increase to 16.5% for next year. And for the teacher retirement system, the current rate is 10.11% for 24-25 salaries. We're just notified, I think in your document, you may have a note rather than the actual rate, but we got this over the weekend that the rate will be somewhere between 9.5 and 10%. So we will plan on using those figures there, probably lean on the 10% and then take it back if we need to. This slide just shows kind of where we are with the ERS and TRS rates, because again, they are a percentage of our $145, $150 million salaries. It's a big number. You can see on the ERS side from around 22, 23, rates have been trending upwards. On the TRS side, from about 2020, 2021, been relatively flat around 10%. So it's hard to predict where this is going to go in the future, but we know that those rates will be what we'll use for 25, 26. Contract negotiations always have an impact at some point in either the upcoming year or an out year. For the AgSep group, we're completed with those negotiations, so we know what those rates will be. Those will be embedded into the budget development process. For Teamsters, food service, and facility operations, their contract expires in 2025. Negotiations will start early, just after the holidays. We'll be in negotiations with some of our Teamster folks. Our Teamster Transportation folks, their contract doesn't expire until 2026. Right now, that we're just, it'll probably be a next year item. And then Gus, GASA, and GTA also expire in June of '26. Those will probably be a next year item as well, but Gus, we are negotiating with, opening negotiations with them currently. Minimum wage is currently at $15 an hour. It will increase to $15.50 come January 1. Instructional initiatives, we'll continue our focus on literacy, ARC core implementation, social emotional learning, mental health supports, our community schools initiative, early intervention strategies, special education training and support, as well as professional training to support our professional learning development. Utility costs, we made adjustments, significant adjustments in the budget in 24-25 or 23-24, so they're kind of embedded in there. So for next year, we're projecting to increase at a minimal 5%. We believe the budget as it currently stands can absorb anything above that. Our charter schools remain a significant cost. For 24-25, we have about 330 full-time equivalents per se for kids. And the cost for 23-24, we spent about $4 million on charter schools. For 24-25 current year with about 330 kids, we're probably in the neighborhood of $4.5 million on charter. For next year, we'll still have 15 or 16 charters in the area with 4 of them here in Greece. Not sure what the enrollment will be. We'll assume that it's going to be at least the same, if not a little bit higher. And the other difference is the tuition amount that we pay to them has increased about $652. So it's gone from about $12,800 to about $13,500. So again, that'll be an impact on the budget. And for private transportation contracts, we'll continue to do this with our contractors. The bus driver and attendant shortage is still being felt. We're attempting to do what we can to decrease the number of routes and to recruit drivers and attendants, but it's been a challenge not only for Greece and the county, but just nationwide. It's very hard to get bus drivers. So luckily, we do have some private contractors that we can have a partnership with that have helped us out to make sure kids get to and from school. So our budget targets for the 25-26 development process, 2 to 3% in foundation aid. We'll figure 2% on CPI. We will stay within the tax cap maximum allowable levy. It is not our goal to exceed that at any time. We'll strategically use our reserves if we need to use them for next year. We'll maintain appropriate reserve levels to make sure that we have enough funds to help us out during the out years, where we will look to, I can't put a number on it, but we will look to make a reasonable budget-to-budget increase as minimal or as what's needed to get accomplished those things we need to get done. We'll continue to match staffing with our current enrollments, and wherever we can find efficiencies, we will do that. Our parameters, again, we will budget for contractor percentage increases for all salaries, so whatever the current contract is, or if there's an, well, chances are nothing, whatever his current contracts are or where we think the negotiated contracts will go, we'll make sure those are included in the budget development process. We'll also increase those salaries by taxes in ERS and TRS benefits. We'll look at all the contingency expenses that we have out there and kind of test those out to see if there's, if they could be modified downward if possible or upward if needed. And again, we'll review efficiencies and redirect the resources where we can. Quickly on the timeline for the budget, October 1st, we adopted the budget calendar. This evening, we're holding the pre-budget hearing. In January 21, we'll have an update for everyone. On February 4th, we will review the state aid from the governor's budget, as well as our first look at our rollover budget, that budget that says, what will it cost us next year to do everything that we've done this year? On February 25th, we'll do another budget update. We'll present the debt service presentation and the tax cap update and a bus replacement proposal on February 25th. On March 4th, we'll do another budget update and have the bus replacement resolution approved. March 18th, another budget update. April 1st, we'll do an update if needed, but the superintendent's proposed budget is scheduled to be on April 1st. It's early this year. And we'll have our public budget input meeting on that evening as well. If there are any changes between March 18th and April 1st, we'll do the update, like we've done in the past, the update to the budget first, and then the superintendent's recommended budget right after that. April 4th, the legal notices go out. April 22nd, 2 weeks later, as opposed to 1 week, the last 2 years, 3 years, there's been 1 week between the budget presentation and the adoption of the budget. This year, there'll be a full 2 weeks. So on April 22nd, we'll look for the adoption of the budget and the adoption of the property tax report card. Absentee ballots will go out. We will make sure that the budget book is available to the public by April 25th. We'll have our official public meeting on May 6th. Notices will go out, budget notices will go out to all our residents on May 7th. The final legal notices will be mailed out on May 16th. And on May 20th is our budget vote and our Board of Education elections.
Ms. Moore?
Charter schools. You mentioned that there's 15 charter schools, 4 in Greece. Is there any difference other than transportation costs that they're in Greece?
No,
Okay,
they all get the same per pupil
that's what I
amount.
thought. Thank you.
Mr. Butler?
Thanks for the presentation, Romeo. On page 4 of your presentation, you gave some report of what New York State is projecting for budgets in the, for deficits in the out years. Is there any reason to even pay much attention to anything beyond next year? When we look at the proposed deficit being cut in half here, I mean, is there any reason to start worrying about the fact that they're talking about $6 and
That's a
$7
good
billion?
question. Initially, I would say no, because it changes so quickly from positive to negative. But I just put it down there, we just need to pay attention to it and be aware of it, not so much need to budget to that. So when we do our budget development process, obviously that's not going to be impacting it. But as we start, and Janine's team is working on a 3-year budget projection of 3 to 5, we do need to be at least, we may not fully implement $14 billion deficit and how that impacts us, but we have to be aware in that second and third year projection that there's going to probably be a hole, and how do we get ready for that hole, whether it's going to be for us 2 million or 5 million.
So I guess that's related to my follow-up question then, which is past New York State behavior in budget deficit years a good predictor of what might come downstream at us? No?
I would say no.
Okay.
I mean, if
Okay.
you recall, even if it was last year or the year before, they were predicting, maybe it was a few years ago, 20% reduction in foundation aid, and that did a 180 real quick after 2 or 3 months. So no, it's unpredictable, which kind of goes back to an overall, even with the foundation aid study, even though it's been fully implemented, and although the Rockefeller Institute will come out with some recommendations, it's still, we're in the same boat in terms of unpredictability, stability. What are we going to get that we were for the last 15 years? So, no.
Okay, thanks. I do have one more follow-up if nobody else has any.
Anybody else? All right. Mr. Butler?
So a lot of what we heard about here tonight is the non-negotiable part of the budget, like it's laws of nature applying here. A lot of we just have to fund this, and we've got the contracts, and we know what the increases are that are required in the contracts and everything. But there is a portion of the budget ultimately that is more discretionary, where we can say, because of our priorities, we're going to fund this and not that sorts of things. So at what point in the process, as I looked at the budget timeline, I wasn't entirely clear on when we would start to hear that kind of stuff.
We generally do that sort of in-house in the budget, in the finance department, and then as we work through our process with cabinet. Those adjustments in the past, the way we've brought them back is, and I'm not sure if we did it last year, but we would bring back and identify those areas that we cut in order. We haven't done that, we haven't had to do that the last 3 or 4 years because our foundation aid went up so. But prior to the implementation of the formula, what we'd probably be back here are those items where we have to adjust downward. We spell out what those items are and review them with the board to get us to a balanced budget. And we review them with the public so we can see that if we had to, we started off with a $5 million gap. We will list out all those areas where those adjustments were made to get us to a balanced budget, both on the revenue and the expenditure side. That's how we've been trying to present it.
And I
But
guess
if
my,
it's more process,
yeah.
we have to work on that a little bit, I think.
My question is actually more about, I remember presentations where the budget was crosswalked to like our strategic plan and our priorities, and because this is our value, we're funding this. Those
Got it.
kinds of things, that's really more of what I'm asking about. So I'm just.
We will work on that.
Yeah,
I don't have a good
yeah,
answer
okay.
for you
I
right
just
now,
was
but we
curious
will
about
work on
when.
that.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I like that idea, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Thank you, Roman.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the budget hearing. There's no speaker signed up for the budget hearing, so we're moving beyond that. Can I have somebody move staffing to the table, please? Moved by Vice President Farmer, second by Mr. Sensel. Any comments, questions, concerns on staffing? Seeing none, we'll start with a roll call vote with Mr. Stutzel.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, that passes 8-0. Assistant Superintendent Larson.
All right, thank you very much. This evening, I am happy to introduce our new Director of School Improvement, Michelle Barton. Michelle attended SUNY Geneseo for a master's in childhood and special education, as well as mathematics. She then went on to pursue a master's of literacy and a certificate of advanced study in administration at SUNY Brockport. Prior to joining the Greece Central School District in 2014, Michelle was a first and second grade teacher and a math coach in Hilton. Michelle has served as an assistant principal at Holmes Road, Buckman Heights, Pine Brook, and Patty Hill. She has been the proud principal of Patty Hill since 2019. She enjoys talking about teaching and learning with her staff at Patty Hill. Her favorite part of any day is getting big smiles from the students. Michelle is excited to work with building and district leaders as well as school improvement teams to support their school improvement efforts. Michelle's family is so important to what she does every day. Spending time with her husband Neil and daughters McKenna and Olivia is one of her favorite things to do. If you don't find Michelle at work with her family, you will catch her with a book in her hands or working with one of the many organizations that supported her family and their late son, Trey, over the past 2 years. Congratulations, Michelle.
We'll have you do a picture with Deputy Smalling, Superintendent Groutman, and in spirit of Election Day, we'll call him Deputy-elect Fleming. Now you have to do your family, Michelle. Your family has to come up.
Right? They asked permission too, which I was like, yeah.
Congratulations.
Next, I would like to introduce our new Director of Student Services and School Improvement, Abby Tarana. Abby
She got the message.
She did. She's a rule follower. I love it. Love it. Abby began her educational journey at Allegheny College, where she earned a bachelor's degree in political science. She then pursued her passion for counseling at Canisius College, obtaining her master's in school counseling. Abby started her career as a school counselor at Sumter High School in South Carolina before relocating to Rochester. Raised in the Buffalo area, go Bills, Abby now calls Webster home. Since coming to Rochester, she has worked as a school counselor at Siena Catholic Academy before starting in Greece 10 years ago. Abby served as a counselor at Odyssey Academy and Athena High School before stepping into the role of District Counseling TOSA. She further advanced her career by earning her Educational Administration certificate from the Warner School at the University of Rochester and is proud of all of the work that she has accomplished as the Assistant Director of Student Services. Outside of work, Abby enjoys spending time with her husband, Gary, and their children, Addison and Carter. She's a big fan of the Buffalo Bills and Buffalo Sabres and is dedicated to volunteering for Kappa Alpha Theta fraternity and Girl Scouts of Western New York. Abby is excited to be part of a team that will further the great work happening in student services and school improvement, and she looks forward to making a lasting impact in the Greece community. Congratulations.
And it's picture time. Superintendent Groutman, Deputy Smalling, Assistant Superintendent Zaffetz, and Deputy-elect Fleming.
I like deputy in waiting.
Deputy in waiting? I'll mess it up and call him lady in waiting. Family time. Congratulations. Moving on to tenure, can I have somebody move the tenure to the table, please? By Mr. Stencil, second by Mr. Bonnegorio. Any comments, questions, concerns on tenure? Seeing none, we'll start with Mr. Butler.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, that passes 8-0. Moving on to the GTA MOA on synergy, can I have somebody move that to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Maloney, second by Mr. Butler. Any comments, questions, concerns on that? Seeing none, we'll start with Mr. Maloney.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, that passes 8-0. Moving on to course offering guide, Superintendent Groutman.
Yeah, I'll invite Dr. Baker to come on up. She's going to take us through, we bring this forward every fall and go through a process of developing this document. In it, really, it represents a whole lot of work and also what we value as a district. And there's a ton to be proud of because within this document, it shows so many different options and offerings for our students that in many surrounding districts, they don't have that. So we're really proud of the work and look forward to hearing about the process this year. So
Yeah,
welcome.
Thank you. So I had the pleasure to sit with Kathy Klicchio as she and I overlapped to learn more about the course offering guide. And I want to echo what Superintendent Groutman had just shared about. So there is so much to be proud of in terms of what we have to offer. So I have really enjoyed digging in and learning more with the committee. And so I just want to give some shout outs to all of our curriculum directors who were part of this process, who really pulled it all together and to create a lot of the offerings that we have in the catalog. And this is truly connected to our commitment 3 around expanding opportunity, and particularly thinking about how we're preparing students for post-secondary enrollment and other opportunities that they have when they graduate with us. And so, so many of the options that they have are really getting them into different pathway opportunities or opportunities to earn credits while we're in college that I'll be speaking more about today. So the way in which we expand opportunity is that we have multiple courses that I'll talk more about, specifically called out on pages 7 through 9 for post-secondary credit. And many of these opportunities are free, which is really important to note that they aren't all coming at a cost to students. Many of them are eligible to take that without a cost. Students also have the opportunity to earn seals of biliteracy, civic readiness, the AP Capstone Diploma, and career and technical education endorsements. And so we've increased this number from last year to this year, and so that's also really exciting as we continue to grow. Students have the opportunity to earn associate's degrees through early college, high school. We have many dual enrollment courses that are co-seated, so whether they're earning the college credit or not, they're still getting exposure to those opportunities. And then we also offer multiple world languages all the way up through level 5. So those are just some highlights that I'll speak more about throughout the presentation. And ultimately, what we're preparing for is this profile of a graduate that we have in our strategic plan with the skills that we highlight around what do we hope that we're preparing our graduates for. So some of these skills, but then also the opportunities. And so mirroring those together through this catalog is something that we're proud of. So the rationale for any of the changes that we made for this year was because of any changes in New York State requirements. We wanted to make it clearer around what was available. And then we also took out areas that maybe were underutilized due to enrollment and lack of student interest that led to a pathway being removed. And so I'll speak to that too. So we had an outdated career pathway that was removed. We made clearer those post-secondary opportunities just through the layout and working with Laurel. So a special shout out to Laurel for her help with that. We also had different qualifications and teacher availability, like specifically with world languages and technology. So that little green call-out button that you see there, or that logo, shows that there are times that we may not offer a course, even if it's listed, because we have students who maybe are enrolling in that, or that we have difficulty with staffing some of those. So those are all made through the staffing process. So this is really spearheads the opportunities that we hope to engage students to be excited about as they go and register for their courses. And then we also called out the work-based learning opportunities, specifically on page 52 and throughout the booklet in different ways, so that depending on where, we tried to think about different angles around where would I go to turn to this if I was a parent or if I was a student, and try to hit it in multiple places. And so there's specific call-outs that we added throughout. So wanted to talk a little bit about the benefits of dual enrollment in AP courses, that ultimately there's a ton of evidence that states that by just taking these courses, we're building skills and confidence, and we're preparing them for the academic challenges that they will face in college, specifically time management and study skills, problem-solving skills, and the opportunity just to try subjects out that might interest them for their careers afterwards. They stand out to colleges. Shows that they're willing to challenge themselves, that they're serious about their education. And 85% of colleges and universities report that they have favorable impact on the admission decision just by seeing that on the transcript. And so scoring a 2 or higher on AP signals that they're ready for college work. And then the last benefit is that it costs a fraction of the cost of if they were going to take it on a college campus. So our opportunities for college credit, we have multiple partnerships with different colleges and universities that you see listed there and that are throughout the document. So we have 90 different college credit eligible courses, and 79 of those we're offering internally within our district, and 11 pathways through a MOCO. So that's also really exciting to say that we can offer that right within our district. And so yes, sometimes they travel to a different building than our own, but they're still able to remain right in Greece, which is exciting. And so you'll see the different opportunities laid out by the departments. So of note that this number of the total of 81, last year it was 74. So we are increasing those different number of courses within each department. I mentioned before that we removed a pathway. There was an administrative assistant pathway that was removed from the pathways, And that was, again, due to lack of student interest and enrollment within that pathway. And so you'll still see here that we have the business administration pathway, computer programming, culinary and hospitality, education, pre-engineering, and then responding to emergencies. And so most of these are supported by New York State pathways. Responding to emergencies is actually one of our most popular ones and not one of those that New York State sort of supports as one of the options, but that we run just locally because of the interest that students have within that. And it's very successful so far within that and giving kids a lot of different experiences. So I mentioned before of some of the other areas that we had to change. And so the pathways and the courses, biology used to be called living environment. So the state is requiring us to change it back to biology. And then also earth science, it used to be earth science, and now it's earth and space science. So that kind of sounds a little exciting to me. I don't know, just to add the space in there. And then work-based learning 1 and work-based learning 2, we're specifying that a little bit more so that we can call out GWIP and co-op, and I'll talk a little bit about those differences. And we removed the administrative pathway like I talked about and the leadership development course at Olympia, but we are offering other leadership development courses. It's just that the enrollment was lower specifically at Olympia, but we do have a plan for other ways to keep building up that leadership pathway. So work-based learning, GWIP and co-op I mentioned before. So GWIP actually has some new teachers on special assignment that we added, so we're able to offer GWIP on all of the high school campuses. So what that is really a half an hour or a half a credit course where they are learning about work-based learning skills throughout the year, and the teachers on special assignment are offering those skill-based learning, and then they also are working in the community to get that credit, whereas the co-op is that it's part of a pathway. And so that's the main difference. So the GWIP is actually offering more flexibility, so that way they don't have to be tied to a pathway in order to get those work-based learning credits. So this College and Career and Civic Readiness Index is something that we've been tracking as part of our strategic plan, and you'll see we've increased and remained relatively steady. There was some adjustments that we were making as we were building the pathways, but I know in talking to Corey Skinner, who I've been working closely as I've been building this, that we anticipate that number to grow as we continue to work through that. And so that calculation is based on different dual enrollment and AP courses, along with some other factors that lead to that ultimate score that we report up to the State Ed Department. So our next steps are focused around, with the approval of this, hopefully tonight, that we start to immediately have a lot of next steps that go into play. And the very first of that is sharing this out with counselors and principals so that we can start communicating with students and families around the different opportunities that students get to enroll in. And so counselors push into classes, or they do sort of a passport day that they travel around to learn about the different opportunities, and teachers are also speaking about the courses that they offer to try to gain interest in the pathways and the courses that they offer so that students can learn more about what they might be interested in. We also share information out with parents, and specifically we are doing a CTE parent night on November 14th, so save the date, from 6 to 7:30. That's held at the GPAC. We'll be talking a lot about a lot of the opportunities that are listed within this course catalog during that night. And then the course selection will start where students are sitting down with their counselors to actually select their courses, and they have to all be in on January 24th, so that way we can start the staffing related to the courses that they select. And so we're thinking about some other opportunities where we can share this more broadly, because we know that parents are a key component of helping to talk to their children about some of those decisions. And so I was working with Laurel around some communication that will go out to families centrally so that they're notified to take a look at the catalog, and then some other ways that we can continue to grow that engagement with families going forward. And that's all I have for you guys.
Thank you, Dr. Baker. Moving on to the special education annual report, can Superintendent Groutman.
Yeah, I'm going to have Stacy Brindisi and Melanie Stevenson come on up. So this is another annual update for us, the annual report that we provide, which really will give us a big picture look at the supports and services and really sort of the profile of our district, big picture as it comes to special education. This is not just an exercise that we do every year. This actually is a great time to gather information, but we use this in terms of for a lot of analysis and decision-making. So we look forward to hearing the details of sort of where we stand this year relative to special education.
Great, thank you. Good evening. Melanie and I appreciate the opportunity to share information with you tonight regarding our special education programming here in Greece. So prior to this week, you received a lengthy report with a lot of data included. While tonight we'll be presenting highlights, I would just encourage you, if there's things we don't cover that you wanted to, or you'd like additional information, just to set up a time, and we're happy to meet to go over the contents of the report. So I wanted to start by introducing the PPS department that's here with me tonight, and I'll just kind of move through names so that everybody can put faces to names. In the front row, we have Greg Burns. Behind him is Jess Matukowicz. They're both addressing our compliance assurance plan procedures, 2 new positions that you approved for our department. Sue Ellen Stacy is next to Jess. She is our preschool special education TOSA. Next to her is Katie Coffey, Callan Ruff. They are assistant directors for PPS. I'll put their assignments so you have that reference and context. Next to Callan is Emily Lathers. She supports all students in our Greece recommended CSE out-of-district placements. Next to Emily is Brian Kurtzel and Lori Ruggieri, who are also assistant directors of PPS servicing students within our district schools. And there's a lot of other team members that are also sitting in the audience tonight who we consider members of the PPS department. So, I would like to just really, I emphasize this every year, when we think about the 10 of us, in addition to 7 full-time clerical staff, support the oversight and management of special ed in our district. And we think about that, I want to just hang a little bit on the continuum of services that Greece offers. I say it every year, I can't overstate it enough. It's really, really unique, the services that we have and that we offer here in Greece, and we're really lucky to have such an expansive continuum. Most districts in the area are responsible for finding the services that are on this continuum. It moves sort of from that upper left of related service. That's our least restrictive, so the least amount of intervention a student with a disability would need to be successful in general ed. And then it moves to that most restrictive in the bottom right-hand corner of residential placements. So any district in the state with kids who kind of fit into that are going to have to locate those programs. What makes us unique and what sets us apart is that upper right-hand quadrant of special class programming. So it's not only the ratios of the programming we deliver that you can see in that chart are very specialized. It's not that even the specialized staffing, it really also is the sheer number and volume. So Greece manages and operates 78 special class sections in our district. And when we think about the continuum that we have, we're only able to provide those supports and services for the vast majority of our kids based on the services that we have available to offer. And those have been approved by our district, and we're grateful for those. I would say that no other district in the area has services similar also. The city might have some as far as the continuum, but the volume is a little bit different, and we even have more services than BOCES has available. So that represents our continuum that we manage every day. In order to help our students be successful with those challenging and complex programs, we need specialized service providers. I can't overstate this enough either. I'm really proud of this. This is unreal to have these specialized service providers supporting our programs. In any other district, including the city, you have a lot of these contracted out from different outside agencies or from local BOCES. They're not able to maintain this, and we're able to support our programs because of the staff that has been approved for us each year. So a little bit about our overall district enrollment that I want to share with you. I want to hang on this chart a little bit and just kind of provide some context and additional details. I want to go back to this chart. I'm sorry, I skipped a page. So just on this page here, it's important to note that all of these employees here are internal Greece employees, with the exception of that transition specialist on the bottom. I did want to highlight that. So looking at our enrollment of students with disabilities, if you look at the 24-25 data in this table and you go to that in-district number, 1,471 represents the total number of students in our 18 in-district schools. And that accounts for 87.3%. You see that corresponding number out of district, and the 1471 are managed by the majority of the team members in our audience tonight. The 99 out of district students are supported by Emily Lathers. Those are CSE recommended placements, so we're responsible for paying for those. We make a determination when our expansive programs are not benefiting students and they're not meeting success. We have made recommendations for students to be in out-of-district placements. And because we recommend those, we're responsible for the oversight of those. The third row in the table underneath is 86 students. So those are parentally placed within district boundaries. Those are district residents, and 3 categories of kids fall into that. So the first one are homeschooled kids, considered parentally placed, and there's 33 of those. The second within that 86 are our charter schools, or excuse me, our charter school students. Nope, hold on, let me go back up. Students that are enrolled in charter schools, also resident students, right? So Romeo mentioned the 14 different placements, and it doesn't matter if our resident students are in a charter school in Greece or outside of Greece. We're responsible for providing those services because they're our resident students. They're in that bucket. And then the final bucket are our own resident students who attend our own private schools. So St. Lawrence, Greece Christian, we have 10 students there in that group. And I give you this context just so that you understand sort of what our department is responsible for the oversight of. It's not just within our schools. That final line there in the table, those 31 students are non-district residents. We are responsible for arranging for services, chairing meetings, identifying service providers, developing the IEP, and parent communication, and for the evaluation of those kids. Those are primarily students who are in attendance at Duracatora, which is a private school located in our district with probably about, I would say, maybe 25 or 26 of those students in attendance there, and the other 6 are out-of-district residents in attendance at Greece Christian or St. Lawrence. So it's between the district of location and district of residence. It gets a little, but the total is 1687. So in looking at our classification rate, you can see over the years it has increased. And there's several variables. I've talked about this before. But things that are really important to remember when you think about our classification over time is, one, what I just shared as far as our complex programming, and parents really often calling us for information and seeking information about our programming, and then subsequently maybe moving into the district. Over the course of last year and through the summer, we had 270 new entrants, students with disabilities, enter, and only 181 exited. So that's a net gain of 90 right there. We had 182 referrals to the CSE last year between buildings and parents. That resulted in over 100 students deemed eligible. And we also have community residences. So we have St. Joseph's Villa and a group home that add to it. I would say, though, that these numbers are not unique. You're going to hear me, you've heard me present similarly in the transiency and the kids that are in and out in complex programming. What's different is that when we've been able to manage year after year without adding too many programs, what's happening is that we're entering more preschoolers than we're exiting as kids get older. And we're starting to feel the squeeze, especially without program locations available for our kids. So it's just really important that we work to build capacity within our district. I firmly believe if we can't do it, then I don't know who can. I've been honored over the past 10 years to learn from people within the district. We have such specialized service providers. So I do think that we can do it. It's really about thinking about how we provide those supports prior to classification sometimes too. But we're here to service kids, so we're not too focused on our classification rate. So I'm going to turn it over to Mel, talk a little bit about the distribution.
All right, thank you. So this slide really illustrates the breakdown by classification, which is pretty consistent in previous years. And as you can see, autism, learning disability, other health impairment, and speech or language impairment have the highest percentages. So this really illustrates our enrollment in district programs by service area. Integrated co-teaching continues to be our primary service delivery model across the district, and it's available in most buildings, as you know. We are seeing our special class enrollment increasing in part due to the new entrants, which Stacy just talked about, as well as an increase in students that need specialized programming. This slide shows the elementary enrollment of students with disabilities, grades K-5. We try to distribute our programs evenly in order to maximize staffing and resources across buildings, but space is always a factor as far as being able to house those different programs, and that's the reason where you see the percentages are so low at Brookside and Patty Hill. And that uneven distribution of programming has contributed to some of the recommendations for the Level Up Capital Improvement Project that were made. You can see here that secondary is definitely more evenly distributed. We have integrated co-teaching in all secondary buildings as well as special class 1211 in all, though not at all grade levels at Odyssey and Olympia. And additional enrollment capacity is designated for our larger campuses during staffing. We always make sure that we can accommodate higher numbers in those buildings. So in terms of some of our department priority areas, as always, we place a high priority on collaboration, communication, clarity, and building staff capacity around our special education processes and procedures. We have our handbook linked here, which has all of written information on those policies and procedures in an effort for us to be as consistent as possible across all of the different buildings, which can be a struggle at different times, but we do our best. Our focus on MTSS and RTI processes are really at the forefront of our work because we rely on those pre-referral interventions prior to determining if a student is eligible at CSE. One of our great points of pride is our centralized recruitment and hiring of support staff. To date, we've hired 84 teaching assistants and 134 aides to support students with disabilities. Linked on this slide is a document that compares the Greece Special Education Continuum with the New York State Special Ed Continuum. Our special class ratios and student profiles are really similar between the NYSED Continuum and ours in Greece. And we've used this document to build the capacity with our GTA Special Education Committee members with regard to their knowledge of the continuum, and we'll continue to revisit that this year as we've had some change in terms of the makeup of that committee. Some other priority areas for our department is monitoring our classification rate and program enrollment. We do have a chart linked here that shows where all of our different programs are located across the district. Stacy had shared some of the reasons for our classification rate, and I'll add that one that is imperative to focus on, and that's our declassification rate. We definitely need to show some improvement in that area. We continue to be really proud of all of the resources that we have to provide to buildings and students with regard to SEL, student behaviors, and those include some of the bullet points here as far as the FBA BIP intervention and facilitation teams, our district behavior consultation, and then all of the mental health building staff and program staff that are part of our and support our special ed programming in each building. In terms of the New York State Performance Plan, as you know, we're currently cited for indicators 4A and 4B with regard to suspensions, and we're currently implementing our Compliance Assurance Plan and APRON, both designed to address the disproportionate rates of suspension. We are also reporting on indicator 11 this year, which measures our rate of success with conducting evaluations within 60 days of receiving parental consent for initial evaluation. Some professional learning areas of focus for our department. As you know, literacy development is a huge focus for the district overall and for our department. All special ed staff who are implementing ARC Core participate in the professional learning and the coaching that's provided with each building. And in addition, our special ed TOSAs also participate in that coaching and professional learning so as to build their capacity to support special education teachers with their implementation of ARC. We remain committed to training our special class, CT, and resource teachers in Orton-Gillingham, which is a direct, explicit, multisensory, diagnostic, and prescriptive way to teach literacy when reading and writing and spelling are areas of difficulty, for example, students with dyslexia, Our special ed TOSAs and Stacy have been leading the implementation and review of our NISA ELA curriculum, which includes the implementation of Readtopia to ensure that our students have access to that high-quality literacy instruction that's based on the science of reading and aligned to the concepts in the book that you can see there, Comprehensive Literacy for All. As you know from learning about ARC over the course of the last couple of years, elements of explicit direct instruction are embedded not only into ARC, but also into Orton Gillingham, Readtopia, and the specially designed instruction that's part of special education programming. So lesson design components like identifying a learning target, activating prior knowledge, as well as the guided and independent practice are all part of that instruction, along with lesson delivery strategies such as checks for understanding, modeling, and demonstration. Again, all components of effective instruction. I touched on our CSE processes and procedures previously, and as you know, it's a never-ending focus for our department to ensure that we are compliant with New York State regulations. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Stacy to talk about our strategic plan and DSIP goals.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about this earlier this year when we presented some information, and Kelly touched on it earlier tonight when she shared some of the work of our secondary buildings, but our 2 areas of focus fall under Goal 3. The goals are included in our strategic plan, the district comprehensive plan, and in school improvement plan, so it's really built our ability to collaborate to address this work together. Our Goal 3 for our secondary buildings is primarily the alternatives to suspension, so we've talked about the compliance assurance plan. It's not only the suspension procedures and making sure we convene those meetings, but that we're addressing behaviors proactively versus responding when there's a crisis, and building those proactive supports and capacity of our teachers to manage challenging behavior. The other area of focus is for a few elementary schools that don't have special classes for elementary students. They're going to be working on the behavioral goal, but for the majority of our buildings, elementary schools, they're going to be working on the integration of students with disabilities. I reported last year that there was sort of that alarming number that we were all shocked at the number of students who were integrated successfully, and then even less the number of students who were integrated in an academic content area. So that's really the work of all the buildings. Each buildings are working with assistant directors to develop a menu of professional learning. There's some pilot procedures that Autumn Lane began that we're implementing in other buildings. Schools have established their baseline and have set really a target for increasing that integration. It's a really important area of need when we think about the achievement of our kids, and we want to keep them in general education whenever possible so that they have the same exposure to the curriculum. They'll be exiting with the same diploma. So we want to have them have access to conversations from their non-disabled peers as well. So that is the focus for our elementary buildings. And that's it for tonight.
Questions? Vice President Farmer.
Thank you. So I'll start with one. I guess what I'm initially was thinking about is testing. And when we have buildings that have more sped classes in it, how does that play out in terms of testing and certain schools maybe getting cited because of low test scores? Can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's part of what we work on between our departments when we think of the Department of School Improvement and our department is working together. There's those ESSA citations that talk about student performance in those subgroups, whether it's in ELA or math, and there's those suspension metrics too that we're working together to kind of think about how they all intertwine. When we think about students with disabilities and citations, there is an element of that when we think about the overall enrollment, which is why we're cautious to think about the amount of programming in any one school. We also have a significant number of students who are eligible for the alternate assessment that don't participate in the same state assessments. So Melanie and I prepare a rationale every year to submit to the State Ed Department requesting that we're allowed over a 1% cap that other districts have for a variety of reasons, so that those evaluation results or lack of participation, because that's a on-site test, kids have to be in school to participate in that over time. It's not just a couple of testing. So we have some permission to not count those negatively against our school buildings because we have the complex programming that we delineate in our rationale.
Good, thank you.
Mr. Butler.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation and your work. I know that you both are considered leaders in our whole county for this work, so I'm really appreciative of all that you do. I had a couple of questions that came to mind for me. You mentioned when you were talking about the, I'm looking at slide 6, where you were talking about the in-district, out-of-district, permanently placed in district. I'm just curious, logistically, I understand we're responsible for delivering the special education services to those students who are actually going to school at a different school building. Logistically, how does that happen?
It makes it really, really difficult because, as you know, we are in a service provider shortage within district, and we have almost 1,500 students in our 18 schools who require services. So we've always leaned on BOCES for service provision for students in our charters and in our private schools. Way back prior to me beginning in the district, I think there were some internal providers that provided service. That's not a model that can be maintained based on the number of students we have enrolled in those schools. So what we're doing now is we're contracting for services to be delivered to students from a variety of outside agencies and kind of piecing it together. What becomes really difficult is the oversight and management of IEPs when we're unable to monitor implementation or supervision of staff. So it becomes a difficult position, which is why we have a full-time administrator moving forward. We had a part-time administrator, Karen D'Angelo, working a few days a week to support us. And now that we have students in charter schools, over all 15 of those locations, Romeo mentioned, we have a student in, right? So now if there's one student that registers there that's new, now we have to find a speech therapist who can go there as well. So it is difficult. We end up requesting reimbursement back for our time for oversight of meetings, clerical provision of services, the bills we pay, but it really becomes a drain on resources and time when we're spending a lot of time finding services that we're struggling to find for our own in-district kids.
Well, and I would suspect that a lot of what needs to happen in order for those students to be successful is the everyday interactions that are happening in the classrooms there, and you've got no ability to influence the way those teachers are interacting with those students.
Yep, correct. And there's different expectations.
But you're still accountable for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And different curriculum expectations too, which makes it tough. Something that we would consider best practice. It makes it tough.
Mr. Bongorio?
Yeah, I think I'd like to just piggyback on this question, Mr. Butler's question, and maybe this actually comes to Superintendent Groutman. I'm wondering if what you were just discussing, that collaboration, and it sounds like most of it, we're having a hard time just serving our own students, but is this possibly an example of the state's recent regionalization efforts? Or is that beyond that? It sounds like there's the collaboration with BOCES and other other schools in the area and maybe other districts. I'm just wondering about that.
I think it's a little different. I mean, I could be wrong because I don't know that everybody is really clear, including us, around like the intent and really efforts. When we get into sort of some of our struggles, what Stacy was just talking about, a lot of that has to do with the charters and the privates. And I know that if regionalization was done well, possibly that could take some of the load off, but I think they're just a little bit different in terms of intent. This also connects to when you hear the term substantial equivalency that we're responsible for. So as a district, this is another sort of topic that you might hear groans about, because we're responsible to ensure substantial equivalency of program with any of our privates, charters, and so on. So like, how do we do that? Not every private school is really interested in us coming in and looking at their curriculum and how it's delivered, but we're accountable for it. So there is so many layers to this in terms of complexity and difficulty for the home district. But for them, the main thing is prioritizing our kids and service providers and trying to do so in an efficient way, because to take a speech language provider and separate them out to 15 places while we've got groups of kids sitting in schools doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Thank you.
Stacey, if I missed anything on that, please
No,
correct
I would
me or
agree.
add. Feel
I would
free.
agree.
Mr. Alvarez?
So the only question I really just have is on slide number 10 with the elementary enrollment of students with disabilities. The only question I really have is just like what is the differentiation between like the population of students with disabilities at Long Ridge and at Patty Hill who have like the same K-5 grade levels, but then have different percentages?
Yep, absolutely. So we have specialized programming across all of our schools, but we have more special class programming in schools that have room and capacity for it. So for example, for Long Ridge, they are a school that houses 5 611 classes, which is our most specialized programming in the district. It feeds into Odyssey. And those are the 611 students who have delivered popcorn that you know about at Odyssey, right? So it feeds into those programs. They have the space available to maintain those programs. Patty Hill and Michelle Barton and Jacqueline would welcome programs in their building as well. They don't have the capacity because of the residence zone and because just the facility itself are putting us on the squeeze as far as our ability to support programs there. So what we do instead in those buildings, the ELC and Patty Hill and even Pine Brook to an extent, they have a couple of unique programs, but is to provide a lot of consultant teacher or resource room support. So kids who are at Patty Hill and can be successful there are mostly going to be in general ed throughout the day and don't need a significant amount of support like kids maybe at Long Ridge might need. So it just depends where our programs are located. You're welcome. That's a good question.
Any other questions? Mr. Butler?
So you mentioned declassification being a priority. Is that part of our citation from New York State that we are not declassifying enough, a high enough percentage of students?
It's not part of our citation. So probably about 10 years back, the State Ed Department established that target rate, which is in your report, of 12.5%. And most districts are hovering a little bit over that at this point. They're not really citing any districts in a classification rate type of way. What they're sort of zeroing in on now is the distribution of classification and placement. So instead of saying you have too many kids classified, they may say you have too many black students classified in a segregated setting. That's a citation area. We're not cited there, but that's how they're sort of breaking down and addressing the classification. So instead of broadly district-wide, they're looking at more the individual decisions of the Committee on Special Ed to make sure that we're taking those things into account, which is a lot of what the suspension citation is for, too, is making sure we're really digging in individually to those behaviors.
Thank you.
Mr. Bonagario?
Thank you. And by the way, I just want to say thank you to both of you. You have been really accessible after the CAP discussion a while back. We had an opportunity to dig a little deeper. I appreciate that. So this, again, follows with Mr. Butler's question as well. I recently attended a workshop, a literacy workshop, that was looking into instructional strategies. And one of the things they pointed out was some of these strategies, which are embedded, as you just described, in our core, Orton Gillingham and in Retopia, were really helpful at reducing just that, the special ed classifications. So I'm wondering, are all of these strategies, and we also know that very often what works for kids with special ed needs works really well for general ed students. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if some of these are more reserved as interventions, or if they are all also tier 1 strategies.
So specifically, are you asking about what we shared with the literacy development on this slide?
Yes.
Okay. Mel, you touched on that. I don't know if you want to address it or I can too. It doesn't
So,
matter.
so obviously our core is the curriculum that we're implementing for all students across the board, except for our nicest students. Orton Gillingham is a specialized reading intervention, again, for those students that struggle specifically with decoding skills. And it is a tier 3 intervention that's provided for students. That decision goes through the building process in terms of identifying who qualifies for that tier 3 intervention based on scores on things like iReady, talking about the student at problem solving, et cetera. And then the Retopia, that is really our reading program that we're using for our students that take the New York State alternate assessment, really ensuring that we're focusing on that high quality literacy instruction for those students and teaching them those functional reading and writing skills that they'll need throughout their life. I don't know if that answers the question.
It's getting at it. So I guess another question or part to that would be, are these geared towards students in the early grades, or would these be available for students who are struggling even, say, later in the elementary grades or beyond?
Yeah, they're based on individual student need. And I would add to what Mel shared as far as sort of the central tenets of the literacy development professional learning that we're working with as far as the gen ed, our core training, is also within specially designed instruction. When we share that training, there is a full sort of day of elements of explicit instruction. So the 16 elements of instruction, although they're best as a component or a precursor to specially designed instruction, it's still best practice for all kids. So I would say that also some of the more specified interventions and really specialized ones are more geared towards students who we might have concerned have a disability. Our interventions and our professional learning is really trying to build the capacity of all teachers for Tier 1 interventions and best practice so that we can easier add to that and enhance that. So that's our goal as far as intervention.
Thank you.
I just want to add one other piece in here, just because I think it's important. The other component, particularly for early learners, is the addition that we've made to language development teachers, who are also targeting our early grades, particularly with Heggerty, phonemic awareness, and that piece. So that is another layer that's not necessarily called out here because it's not special education, but is really helping early on.
Sure.
Any other questions? I just have one quick, I hope it's quick. For
Try
those
not to
99
disappoint.
students out of district that are placed,
Yep.
what, you mentioned the oversight. In a brief, what's that oversight look like? I mean,
So it's interesting that you asked. We can ask Emily what she
So,
thinks about
Emily.
that oversight. So what is interesting and what makes it difficult is that Emily is our point person and liaison, Emily Lathers, for all of the outside placements. So she is the point person for over 20-plus locations. So what that means and what makes it difficult is the oversight is different. We're able to build capacity with our assistant directors and the audience supporting schools because we have leaders working on the same things. Emily is really coming as a support from district who's working with them to get information and give information. And with that being the primary contact to that whole program is families too. So when families have an issue, they're not always calling and not frequently contacting the school sites, they're contacting our office. So Emily interfaces with all those families. I would say to you, anytime you want to, I'm going to offer her out. She knows the details, so many details. People in this room would be able to attest to the level of case management. And that's what really makes it unique, is they're our most challenging students, and we are representing them and serving as a representative and advocate, but we're the only member of that team because it's all outside providers. So that's what makes it tricky.
and I guess my follow-up to that a little bit is the way you describe that. If we're not happy with one of the providers, hypothetically, do we have a say to not use that provider moving forward? If Emily feels that, like, Sean's school of whatever isn't really living up to what we'd expect, can we avoid using Sean's school, or is that really outside of our realm?
So it depends, right? Most of the services for Emily students, because they're CSE services arranged for the district, because the lack of success in our own programs, we provide, the district or the program provides, whether it's Mary Carriola or BOCES. Hopefully those services are built in, although we frequently get notifications they're in a shortage too or have lack of providers. So those services are built in. In Mary Carriola School of the Holy Childhood, that all kind of fits into her realm. It's where you get into those charters and privates where it's not a comprehensive program, it's itinerant, PT here, OT here. That case management for our vacant position is even more significant because they're not even special ed programs. They don't speak the same language.
Okay, thank you. Superintendent Grotman, do you have anything else or no?
No, I do have one thing. I just want to point out that just commend the department, because when you actually look at that in terms of numbers and sites and so on, the work that's being done by every one of the people sitting here is just Herculean and huge. And it's also at a time when outside providers, so we have struggled, and one of the things that they didn't mention, and I'm sure because you didn't want to sound like you were complaining, is that what we have lost in our region is a lot of additional supports for students. So when we talk about outside placements and supports, space, programs have all decreased. And that goes from BOCES, it goes to other special programs that we're used to, which has led to a great deal of difficulty in terms of maintaining kids maybe within our programs who we feel like really aren't successful and they belong someplace else. And then sometimes it's even where we have students awaiting placement, which makes me really unhappy. So we monitor that regularly. They give us the data on that. I use that in my meetings with the county. But it is something that I think we need to build awareness for, because as a region, those have decreased. And it's not just Greece that's feeling that, it's a lot of districts. And I think if we don't address it as a region, we're going to continue to not necessarily service students as they should be and by what they need. So I just think that's sort of an area that isn't touched on with this, but I would love for our board and for our community to better understand that at some point so that we can do more advocacy in that area.
And to just punctuate that point, currently, as of today, we have 10 students who are receiving tutoring and 12 other students who are awaiting placement, but in their programs awaiting placement. So we have currently 22 Greece Central students who are awaiting an out-of-district placement with none on the horizon anytime soon. So that's the squeeze that I talk about.
And I just want to finish with, it seems like a century ago when I got on the Board of Education, our special ed department was was the right adjective, maybe a train wreck. So you guys have done an amazing job. Special ed was a big issue for the Board of Education. It was a constant source of community aggravation back almost 2 decades ago, but you guys have brought it such a long way. Where people are moving to Greece, where they have kids that need special ed services as opposed to they were moving out at that point. So I just want to commend you and thank you guys for what you're doing. It's not easy work, and I appreciate what you're doing, and the board appreciates what you're doing. So I just want to thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that feedback.
Moving on to change orders. Can I somebody move the change orders to the table, please? Moved by Vice President Farmer, seconded by Mr. Butler. Any comments, questions, concerns on the change orders? The only comment, Mr. Bonagore, do you have a question?
Yes. So if this is better taken up at a different time, I'm just wondering, we have the one change order regarding lighting. Do we have a process that looks at return on investment for those kinds of estimates of savings? Okay.
We do.
That's great. I'm just curious about that.
We're trying to replace all the the exterior lighting with LED lighting because of the energy saving payback process, which is like 8 to 10 years.
Okay.
But yeah, we do look at it. Those 7 lights were the only ones on the parking lot that were not LED, and we decided to do it to finish that place up.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the change orders? Just a comment, the change orders amount to $54,641. With that, all those in favor? I'm not going to do a roll call for this. We're going to move on. That passed 8-0. Moving on, everybody interrupted me. Lost my train of thought. I'm having a stroke. Leave me alone. 6.02, tax rebills. Can I somebody move that to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Maloney, second by Mr. Stenzel. Any comments, questions, concerns on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? That passes 8-0. Anticipated bids. Does anybody have any question on this? I'm going to ask. Gunsmithing lathes in the schools. I'm trying to figure that out.
I had it, and I didn't agree with the
Okay.
same question.
Yeah, if you can just get that back to me. It was just a curiosity. I should have emailed it to you.
Not literally guns.
Because the gunsmithing lathes I know are totally different. Okay, I just wanted to check. Okay, very good. Anybody else have any questions? All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Can I have somebody move the consent agenda to the table, please? Moved by Mrs. Malor, seconded by Mr. Bonagorio. Any comments, questions, concerns on this? I just want to take a moment to thank the Greece Education Foundation. They donated $30,494 this past month to a variety of different things: school challenge winners, reading brag tags, portable speaker systems, Yep, there's just a whole list of different things, whiteboards, sensory toys, band instruments, our tricycles for PE. So I just want to thank them. I want to thank the Arcadia High Extra Classroom Fund for their donation, the Athena High Extra Classroom Funds for their donations. The Kiwanis Club donated books to Pine Brook. David Brown donated, in memory of Roy Baumann for the class of 1972 to Arcadia High. NYSER donated $1,000 for the school bus safety celebration luncheon. Superintendent Groutman made a donation for Board Appreciation Week to the district, and Michelle Barton donated a clarinet. So for them, I would like to thank, Monroe Ambulance donated the ambulance. So I'd like to thank all of them. With that, anything else on the consent agenda? Seeing nothing, all those in favor? That passes 8-0. Moving on to the course offering guides. Does anybody have any questions? On the or somebody move it to the table first? Sorry. Moved by Mr. Butler, second by Mr. Bonagorial. Now, is there any questions? Mr. Bonagorial. Sure. Anybody else?
Ready? I have one ready. Oh,
Mr.
sorry.
Butler.
I want to do some personal social media sharing for parents around when the course offering guide is available, because I think many parents miss it and miss a great opportunity to have a conversation with their students. So I'm curious when that is scheduled to happen. Tomorrow? Okay. Great, that's fast. All right, excellent. So I'll look at my social media tomorrow then. And I also just wanted to mention, I think I appreciate the other than college pathways content that's in here as well, because I think too often students who aren't interested in going on to college, or maybe not right away, feel ignored in these sorts of situations. So I think there's a lot of good stuff in here, and for students who are on a pathway other than college. So I appreciate that.
Mr. Stetzel.
Thank you. I just wanted to first say to Dr. Baker, you and your team that helped build this, we were talking about Herculean efforts. I think this document, with how comprehensive it is and all the detail you put into it, I give you guys a huge kudos, honestly, and a great appreciation for what you and your team do, because this is fantastic. And I love every bit of it. As a person who teaches at a college, I love it. So this is fantastic. One piece of feedback I'd like to give, and it was just as I was going through it over the weekend, on page 20, and it continues on into 21, you have areas here under employment opportunities with different positions listed and whatnot, with different estimated yearly wages. I would just say, if in the future you could, I would expand upon that and give maybe a low, medium, high range for each of those salaries using Bureau of Labor Statistics as your data point. I noticed that you use the New York Career Zone. I went onto that website to play around with it myself. I found it a bit archaic. I don't know if it's just a state mandate that you guys have to do that, but BLS and the Career One shop is awesome. I have printouts of it here. I mean, I just looked at an example like lawyer, for instance here. The estimated yearly wage according to Career Stop is $95,340. But when you look at actual jobs on Indeed.com in the area, it ranges everywhere from $50,000 a year for a family attorney all the way to almost $200,000 for corporate law. So the reason I put this in here to be a stickler is because I, as a professor, when I teach, one of the things I have to teach about in pretty much all of my classes, I'll have to spend a whole day talking about different health professions, right? And my students will sit there and they'll be like, well, when I get out of here, I'm going to make $100,000 a year. And then I have to be the one to pop that bubble and go, no, unfortunately, here's a realistic portrait of the salaries you're going to make based on the data that's available from the federal government at a low, medium, and high rate. I don't mean to be a stickler. I think what you guys created here was fantastic, but for a future iteration, that would be a piece of feedback, because you want to give your kids and the students and their families a realistic portrait of what they could expect with these different estimated wages and whatnot, especially if you're trying to encourage kids to go down a particular career pathway. So that's just my piece on that. I do have more questions. I'll probably email you guys because I have a lot of them. I would love to be on the committee that makes this thing, because I have so many ideas for this to make it better. So thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Stetzel. Mr. Bonagorial.
I thank my colleagues for bailing me out of that. So, just a question regarding the staffing, because we have had staffing challenges, are we confident that are we currently set to meet the staffing needs for this program? Or is that something that down the road we might have to fill in?
So the areas that we have the most difficulties are in just specific areas, like technology. Teachers have been a struggle, in particular world languages. And so those are areas that we're working with HR to actively recruit. And so that's definitely on our minds and something we're actively working to make sure that we can secure not just a staff member, but someone who's going to engage and draw people into the programs and the courses. And so, yes, that is something that, as a staffing issue, it is on our minds, and we do think that we can work to address, and we're trying to find different avenues in order to do that.
I would add on to that, though, I do think we're at risk. So I say this very sort of plainly, that when you look at really trying to expand CTE efforts and that work in schools, and this is, again, something from an advocacy perspective in terms of certification and trying to get people to run a culinary program, we need somebody who has been a chef, you know what I mean, and had that experience. And to draw second career people has been a challenge. And then oftentimes what happens is we might be running a pathway that has some popularity or is gaining some traction, and we lose a key teacher. Well, and we don't want to lose that teacher, but like I think we are at risk in terms of that tenuousness because we don't have a lot of those folks waiting and like just hanging out in case that person was to leave. So
With the certification.
yes,
Yeah,
yes. And that's so like it's two-part, because like number one, we want to keep and take care of our people, but we also need some help from the state in terms of attracting and getting good people into these programs. And like we want to, like we keep expanding, but without that support from the state, that'll continue to be an issue. And if someone walked out the door tomorrow, we have a great teacher over at Arcata. If he walked out the door tomorrow, we'd be in trouble. So that's realistic.
Yeah.
And a good question.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Mr. Bonagoro?
So on page 8, there's a reference to the AP scoring. It says AP score of 2 or higher on AP classes, signals ready for college work. I looked at the College Board, and they call a 2 as possibly qualified. So kind of along the lines of Mr. Stenzel's question, we've got a list of dual enrollment partners. Will they recognize a 2, or is that, what would expectations be of a student?
So, so I think you're talking about how that there's the 3 and the 4 scores. So ultimately, even if students aren't scoring the 3 and the 4, the fact that they took the course and had that higher rigor and still got the 2, that they're still looking at that favorably from the college was the point. Not that that's the proficient rate of showing like.
They might not get college credit for
Correct.
it?
So they may not get the credit for that, but they are still showing from the enrollment from the colleges that they're ready to take the course. So it's just because they got the 2 doesn't discourage them from being enrolled
So it's
in the college. It's still
Passing grade,
worth
they've
it.
done well, but they might not get that.
Yeah, and
Yes.
schools are all over the board with what they take. So you could, on one test, get a 3 and get credit, and then with one school, and then in another school, they might require a higher number.
Yes, each college is
So
different.
it's, that whole piece is another whole challenge.
Yeah.
But that 2 is sort of that base.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I just have one quick one. On those CCR index, do we know, like, is that just an individual score? Do we know how we rank with that?
Looking over, Corey, is there rankings against the state for that we have for the College and Career Index?
Well, every district is rated accordingly, and there's a number of factors that go into that. Is that?
But do we know where we rank against other districts? Yeah, we could see if we can find that.
Okay. Anything else? All right. All those in favor? That passes 8-0. Moving on to student board member comments. Mr. Alvarez.
So yeah, basically, so my comments today revolve around the T-STAC group, which is this Superintendent's Advisory Council. So we had an official meeting, our official first meeting in October, and it was where everyone came together. We were connecting with one another, relationship buildings, of course. We were able to gain some teamwork skills, and then as well as kind of understand what we're going to be doing for the rest of the year as we're working together from different schools of the district. And then some other comments that I have is the photography class. Across the district, many students were advocating for a field trip for their class where they're able to just have a new environment and just have a way to enhance their digital photo taking skills. And then they were able to get that field trip and actually go on it and be able to really understand the difference between what it looks like taking a picture of like a human and then taking a picture of an animal, because they went on to a farm. So that was very interesting to learn about. And then there's language students actually in kids care who are actually planning a Friendsgiving for families where they're truly embracing the emotion of gratitude. Many of the students were helping by making flyers, choosing decorations, planning the food or the catering for that program. And then even today, since I just came from work to be here, was one of the students were actually working on an attendance spreadsheet, and then actually putting down like who are the students going to be in the Friendsgiving, who's going to be like different presentations. And I just found that interesting because that student's only in 4th grade. So the fact that she was making a spreadsheet in 4th grade was just great to me. Another thing is the robotics team. So there's 5 students: Kylie Broyle, Gianna Lee Gonzalez, Zita Zapatella, and Izzy Aloylai, who are the first woman robotics team who are drivers and programmers, which is interesting because they were able to step up in their robotics team, and then they were able to take over levels of jobs that they didn't have the opportunity for before, and then, like I said, become that first team in the Greece Robotics to become a woman's driver and programmer. And also kudos to Emily Ann Cazell and Ms. Flagger for having a well-presented presentation and then seeing leaders in Greece schools excelling from school and then doing it in the community as well.
Thank you, Mr. Alvarez. Any other board member comments? Mrs. Millar?
Had a lot of fun the last couple weeks. I got to visit my 2 schools. Olympia is one of my schools, and I was able to take a tour there. I went to a parent exchange, which was a parent information exchange, because when I told my son I was going to a parent exchange, he questioned whether he could have exchanged a parent when he was in high school. So I corrected myself on that. It was nice to hear parents ask questions. I learned, they spent a lot of time talking about counseling at the exchange, which was nice. Got to tour the building at Olympia, see their community schools room is done, and it looks great. I also observed, having been a high school teacher, changing times in the hallways is a little aggravating and loud, and I was very impressed with 2 things. The whole changing time, it's not changing time, what's it called? Passing. See, I knew that's how long I've been gone. The principal was in and out of the boys' bathroom 100 times looking for the vapors, which I appreciated. Like, he goes, just a minute, and he runs in, and I'm looking for them. Second, I saw 2 students have their cell phones confiscated. And there was no confrontation, and 2 different administrators, you're not supposed to have that, took it. You can pick it up at the security desk. And I was so pleased that they're, first of all, following the rules and that the kids understood the consequences and it wasn't a big scene, which I really appreciate. My other school from going to high school is the Early Learning Center. And I had an opportunity to go and see their Leader in Me assembly and see how excited those little ones are. It's so thrilling. They also had a parent night called Westy College. Westy University, and parents were there. They had dinner, and then the kids went into rooms to play, and they talked to the parents about what they're teaching their kids. And I thought that was great, and I want to see parents continue to do things like that. Had an opportunity on a Saturday to go with some Greece students to the Greater Rochester Gay Straight Alliance Summit. It was a wonderful day of workshops for students and parents, and I was so glad to see parents there and being with their students, and meant a lot to me that I was invited to go. Two other things, because you know I like the arts. We had the RPO here last week, and that was fabulous to see families and little kids. It was only an hour, and it was an opportunity to see the RPO at no expense to families, which was fabulous. And the district art show brought, I think, 16 pieces of artwork up to district office, and if you're there, please go see them because they're fabulous, and the students were so proud to have their things hanging there. So great start to the year.
Thank you. Any other board member comments? Mr. Stutzel?
Thank you. So obviously, I'm a new board member, and I was really excited that I got invited by two principals to attend my first liaison visit to Holmes Road Elementary and Athena Middle School, both of which I was really impressed to see all the hard work and the different things that they're doing there. And it's been a long time since I've been in an elementary school, since my daughter, is 15 now, and it's been many years. So seeing just the magic that they do at such a young age is really incredible. And more importantly, I was really impressed with Principal Keelan's team. I mean, they just have such a great camaraderie amongst all the staff there. Everyone seems to be on the same page, working together. Everyone seems smiling, happy. It was great. It was just a great environment. And I was interested to see, I had heard it before, but seeing it in the flesh was one thing. These vending machines that they have up front when you walk in. So apparently I don't remember what the rules are, how they get it, but the kids can actually get a token, put it into the vending machine, and it'll spit out a book of their choice. I think this is the coolest thing. I'm like, where was this when I was a student? I'm, dating myself, but. And then at Athena Middle School, Principal Fulkerson went over with his leadership team. It was on the same day as Superintendent's Day, and we went over data and whatnot. And I was just really blown away to see the progress that him and his team have made in terms of academic performance and whatnot. So I just want to give a shout out to both of those teams. They're really awesome in what they do. The last and final thing I want to talk about is Dr. Payne and her team had invited me to be a part, and it was with Tracy. We went to the launch of the Community Schools Coalition of Monroe County. Over 75 organizations, I'm probably missing a few in there, were in attendance. It was such a just amazing thing to see the collaboration of different districts, different community partners of different types. So education, partnering with healthcare, it was just really cool to see that, especially from my background where I worked in social work for many years in the public health setting. So it was interesting to see it in a different level, which is why I appreciate it. And for me, what I think is great about it is because of these efforts, these partnerships, our students and families have a good safety net in place as a result that looks different for each school, because every community school looks different as part of the strategy, right? So that safety net's there to ensure that those students have the ability to thrive and remove barriers to their education. And I'm really impressed and excited to see what they do next, and hopefully I can be a part of that. And so with that, because we don't get to speak at the next board meeting, I just want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving holiday. Thank you.
Just a point of clarification, there is no second November meeting.
Apologies. So have a happy Thanksgiving holiday.
Any other board member comments? Mr. Butler?
Thank you. And I wanted to also give a shout out, as Board Member Alvarez did, to the Athena student leaders who spoke today. I'm a proud Athena graduate myself, so it's always great to see Trojans showing up and showing out. Great job by those two students. Also want to give a shout out to the unsung heroes of the communications department. You get a great newsletter in this district, and there's a ton of work goes into putting this out on such a consistent basis. So if you haven't looked at it in a while, hopefully it's still sitting on your kitchen counter. Take a look at it, and there's there's really good content in there about the Level Up Capital Improvement Project. There's another election day coming up on December 10th, where we're going to ask residents to turn out and vote for that. There's also the high school musicals have all been announced, and the schedule of all those performances are on the back. So hopefully folks can use that to mark their calendar. I also wanted to mention two other things. One, the Greece Central School District is a great place to work, and not just for teachers. We have lots of openings in the district for people other than teachers, and people often think about a school district as a place for teachers to work, but 2/3 of our employees are not teachers. And so there's lots of great opportunities with reliable schedules and interesting work where you're making a real difference. And so encourage people who might be considering a career change to consider the district as a place to work. I'm part of the district comprehensive improvement team, which has been very impressive to me. All the folks that are involved in that are so committed to making things better for the district and being on this continuous improvement path. And one of the other things that I noticed there is there's a new term in workplaces that talks about psychological safety that really refers to the freedom to disagree without fear of reprisal. And I really witnessed that in those settings where folks were, Kathy was there and she'll make a point and somebody will disagree with that point and not have any fear of that coming back on them. And so I thought that was a real demonstration of the culture in our district. And lastly, that course selection guide comes out tomorrow, everybody, in case you didn't hear. So take a look at it with your kids. Thank you.
Mr. Maloney.
I'll try to keep it short because I know a lot of people want to get out of here. Brian Lum and Anne Marie Sims invited me to a parent meeting, and it was done last night, and it was wonderful. There was a lot of information. There was a few directors there that helped out and gave information to all the parents that attended and asked questions, and they had a wheel that spun around, and it was like bingo, and you had placements there for questions, and it would all went very, very well. And I also would like to a shout out to all our veterans in the community. Happy Veterans Day.
Mr. Bonnegorio.
It is Thanksgiving month, and in that regard, yes, thank you to our veterans, all of them. And I'm going to use the staff sitting in front of us here, extending through you to all of your colleagues. Thank you for all your hard work, and happy Thanksgiving to all of you.
Thank you. Do you have okay.
I'll go quick. Most of everybody have already mentioned everything. I just wanted to take a quick moment to recognize we do have some more retirements. They do deserve a recognition. I was going to go through this faster just because everybody wants to get out of here, but they deserve it. I'm going to botch some of these names, so I apologize. Gretchen Bartoch, Carl Canty, Dawn Ferris, Gina Geisel, Lori Selichek, Rob Sneddon, and Brett Zeller. Tremendous years of service, 29 years, most of them. So that's commendable service. We talked about committees are already done, parent information. Mr. Stenzel mentioned the community schools. Mr. Butler already mentioned the capital improvement vote on December 10th. Legislative meeting we talked about this during our budget. That was regarding the health care. Parent-teacher conference have taken effect. I hope everyone had a chance to get in touch with their teachers and staff regarding that. If you haven't, please get a chance to do so. And let's see, Veterans Day, Mr. Maloney, we've already covered that, but thank you for your service as well. Happy Thanksgiving. There was a big vote today. I hope everyone voted. You still have some time, I believe, 20 minutes, get it in. Other than that, hurrah.
Vice President Farmer.
Okay. Yes, everything's been mentioned, but one thing that I want to talk about quickly, and the new board members for Board Appreciation Night. Every time that I come here and new people are on the board, they're just like, wow, what is this? And I want to say thank you to all of you, because the work that you're doing is the work that should be held up. This is, yes, we're volunteers and we care and we're supportive. So thank you.
All right, I'm going to echo board appreciation. On behalf of the Board of Education, I want to thank all our schools for recognizing the Board of Education during Board Appreciation Week. The tokens, the notes, the little gifts were much appreciated and valued by all the members of the board. I had two amazing liaison visits at Athena High School with Principal Flagler and at Pine Brook. They were both, I'd never had a liaison with Pine Brook, so this is my first time there. And I was grateful to be able to have the visits at both schools. Couple more things. Mr. Barnaguro hit on Thanksgiving. It's in a couple weeks. I want to wish all of our staff and our families and our communities a happy Thanksgiving. Take the time to enjoy family time. It's precious, so enjoy it. I also want to talk about, there's a Salute to Veterans concert on Thursday night at Greece Athena. It's an amazing event. If you haven't been, take the time, go there. It starts at 7 o'clock. It's well worth your time that evening to attend. I want to also salute our veterans throughout the district, my colleague, Mr. Maloney, for his service, Mr. Butler for the service of his daughter. Obviously, my son was mentioned earlier for his service, and all of our staff members and our community members that have served this country. They should be appreciated. And with that, this is something that is special to me. Obviously, my son deploying next week. On Fridays, wear red. You remember everyone deployed, so if you think about on Fridays, wear a red t-shirt, wear red socks, wear a red hat, whatever. On Fridays, it's a great program. It's been going on for years, but it's to remember the families and our service members who deploy. So thank you. With that, go Bells. Superintendent Groutman.
So I want to start just by acknowledging that tonight is election night. And one of the things that I was able to see in the last month or so was the really significant work being done in our schools to address the election. So I started to ask questions several weeks ago in fear that people were shying away from this topic, given the political climate. And my worry was that everyone just got quiet and that these conversations weren't happening in classrooms and it really wasn't being discussed. And so I started to ask students about what they were learning about, and Silas was one of them, but I hit on a few others just to find out if and what they were learning. And what I heard from students, and I actually got to witness some of this as well, is that they had been having robust and healthy conversations about the election in their social studies classes, in CIA, in their English classes, in different settings throughout the school day. All of them reported that they were healthy conversations and that they were respectful conversations. All of them talked about really specific things that they learned, whether it be things about media bias or things around different types and ways that campaigns run. But there was content and sort of meat to those conversations that I thought was really healthy and something to be happy about. And then I walked into, actually, Jeremy and I walked into the library at Arcadia where there were several classes who were creating projects around their core values. So it was a very personal project where they were asked to think about not only what they cared about, but things that their families cared about and core memories that they had, whether it be books that they read as students or as children, or movies they may have watched with their family, connected to things that were important to them. And then they also had taken that and were looking at some of the issues that are being studied in terms of the political climate. So not necessarily fighting and opposing, but really just trying to think really clearly about what is out there in terms of choices and how do you do that as a voter and as a citizen, and what does that mean? And it just, I guess, was really impressive, and I was proud as a district that that those conversations were happening and that that education was happening, particularly at a time that I think it's easy just to be quiet and to ignore. So I'm proud of that, and I'm very, very hopeful that as we go forward, that those healthy conversations continue, and that regardless of an outcome, there's going to be people disappointed, that we can continue to have this respectful dialogue going forward, and that we model that for our children who are watching, and they are doing it so beautifully in the classroom.
modeling it for us.
They sure are. They sure are. I was really proud about that. And then the only other thing that I just wanted to mention is it is Thanksgiving month. So I was November is my favorite month because it reminds us around this idea of gratitude. We have Veterans Day in there, and we call out Bill every year for his service. I think we would be remiss not to mention the younger generation, the Carolines of the world, the Connor who's being deployed next week, and recognize not only that service that they're giving, but also just the heaviness of that on families and the sacrifice for all families in terms of watching kids, young people move into that domain, and how much we need that as a country. So just huge thanks and gratitude to them. And that's all I have. I hope everybody has a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Superintendent Groutman. Mr. Maloney.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Second by Mr. Stetzel. All those in favor? Have a good night, everyone.